So I think this is going to be a really good video for anybody who is genuinely interested in becoming better at lighting, because what we're going to talk about today is the thing that I think separates the videographers on YouTube who claim they know what they're doing from the proper gaffers and the working DPs who actually do. Do me a favor and pull up a behind the scenes video from whatever movie you like, preferably a horror movie because they tend to be darker and more moody. I'm going to talk about The Conjuring 2 because I think it's a really good example. When you watch the behind the scenes for that film, you'll notice that the sets are very bright. They have all kind of lights rigged up in the ceiling, giant units coming in through the windows and everything. When you look at the light level in those rooms, it's very bright. But yet whenever you watch the actual movie, it's very dark, it's moody, it's dimly lit. Now, why is that? What we're going to be talking about today is something that I think is incredibly important as a cinematographer, and that is lighting and then setting your lens versus setting your lens and then lighting. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I have a little bit of an issue with the current climate of cinematography online, and it's something that I feel has been exacerbated over the years with the increasing sensitivity of camera sensors as well as lenses getting progressively faster. What I feel I'm often seeing is this over-reliance on using high ISOs and shooting wide open to make do with minimal lighting. And that's not to say that you can never do that. Of course, if the story or the shot calls for that, or that's what you need to do to make a shoot happen, that's totally fine. That's not the issue. The thing that I see that I think is an issue is when people use these things as a crutch to avoid having to actually light, and I think that is what encourages bad habits. Here's a shot from a project I did recently that was shot wide open at f1.2 and at 12,800 ISO, but that wasn't because we didn't have enough light. It was actually lit using an Aperture 600C blasting 100% through muslin, and I had a ton of ND in front of the lens to bring the exposure down to where I wanted it to be. We wanted to shoot this shot wide open because we wanted to give the image this dreamy, sensual, intimate feeling. So what I did was I set the lens to 1.2 and then I started lighting the image from there. This shot could have very easily been done with, without all that ND. We could have used much smaller units for it. So the question is, why did I choose to light it this way? Let's take a look at a quick example. So I want to light a shot right here and I want to balance it with the lamps behind me. Now I want to shoot this shot at a T8, so that's where I'm going to set the lens. Now if you look in the background, you'll notice that the lamps aren't clipping and I'm still holding the information there. So the last step is to bring up my key light. Now I want it to be 2 stops under, so I have it currently reading at a 4. Now, when you stop down or you ND down, you're making it harder for light to hit that sensor. It's going to take a lot more level for you to get exposure, which is going to give you more control, allowing you to be much more precise with your lighting. Right now, the key light is set at 63%, so we have plenty of room to bring the level down if we need to. Also take notice of that tube light in the background. That's currently set at 45%, and just take a look at how much light is being picked up by the camera right now. Now, if we were going to take a low light approach and shoot the same shot at a faster stop, let's say maybe a 2.8, we would still be able to get proper exposure, but now our light is at 8% brightness, which is a much lower level, so now we don't have as much room to bring it down if we wanted to. Even the lamp in the background is as low as it can go on a dimmer. We don't have as much control, and we're much more susceptible to spill coming from other light sources at lower levels. That tube in the background is still set to 45%, the same level as it was in the previous shot, but look now at how much more light is showing up. Let me show you how this would work if we were trying to give somebody something like an eye light. When you're in a low light scenario, you risk the eye light spilling into the rest of the image, even if you have it set to a really low level, and this can kill the contrast and shape that you have on your subject. When you're at a deeper stop, the spill from that same eye light becomes much more manageable. You'll be able to get that glimmer in the eye without having as much spill. When pretentious people in cinematography say things like painting with light, this is what they mean. Let me use an analogy that my friend Connor made. Let's imagine you're trying to send a message with Morse code, but the little paddle that you hit to send the message, it has really low tension. You're sitting there trying to send a message, but because the tension is so low on the paddle, vibrations, wind, all these other external factors are shaking and moving that paddle, and they're messing up your message. What you need to do is increase the tension in that paddle so all those external forces can no longer move it and only you have full control over it. Only then are you going to be able to get your intended message out. Oh hey, come here real quick. I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Audio. Audio is an awesome all-in-one music and sound effects platform that quite literally has just about everything you could need. From horror to drama to romance to irreverent, absurdist comedy, they've got music for you. They also boast a handful of sound tracking tools that aim to make that process of finding the perfect sound a lot easier. With Link Match AI, you can take a link from any song on any existing streaming service, paste it in the search box, and Link Match will find you similar music. But hands down, my favorite feature that Audio offers is Hans AI. You can think of Hans AI as kind of like your personal assistant. With Hans, you can actually type in just whatever it is exactly that you want, and he'll go find you music. You could type something in like, 2 strangers bump into each other on the street. They lock eyes. Something about each other feels familiar. Could it be love? Sorry, I forgot what we were doing. What was that, Hans? Oh, you found me music? Thanks, Hans. Audio is offering you guys a 70% off discount of their Pro plan for an entire year. That's going to take it all the way down from $200 to just $59, and that's for unlimited music, sound effects, as well as access to Link Match and Hans AI. Let's not beat around the bush here. Music is a very important part of storytelling, so if you're looking to take your storytelling up a notch, use that link down in the description below or use my code to get that 70% off deal. It helps out the channel immensely. Thank you again to Audio for sponsoring the video. Now back to the lighting. Let's go back to the Conjuring 2 and the BTS that we talked about earlier. This is why the images are so dark and moody and contrasty. They're setting their exposure first and then they're lighting the shot. You might with your eye be seeing really bright sets with a bunch of light spilling everywhere, but what the camera is seeing is actually very controlled. And what I'm talking about here isn't the same thing as exposing to the right or overexposing and then bringing your image down in post. If your lens is set to, let's say, a T8 and you want to key somebody with a light that is one stop under that, then you simply would set that light so that it's reading at a 5.6. And it's the same way for if you wanted to shoot at a faster stop, you could set your lens at a T2 and then add 3 stops of ND so that it is reading like an 8. And then you would set your key to a 5.6 and you would light from there. This is how professional lighting is approached. That was also how I shot this recent film that I just did. We had a lot of practical lamps on set, so I put 250 watt bulbs in all of them and I turned them on and I let them go full brightness. I set my exposure so that I was holding all of the lamps and none of them were clipping, and then from there I had my baseline exposure and then I started lighting. Now I could have just as easily threw the lens wide open and started dimming down on the lamps, but if I did that, then I would have started to lose contrast and I would have less control over the lighting. Now of course, I'm not saying that you should never shoot wide open, bumping up your ISO, throwing your lens wide open, and doing that to make do with minimal lighting situations, that's totally fine. What I am saying is that you shouldn't always do this, especially as a means to get out of doing any lighting. There are people that I've seen do this where they use it as a crutch. They're able to make such beautiful images using available light, and that's awesome. That's totally fine. But when they get their hands on gear, a crew, and they actually have to light stuff, they don't really know what to do. When I was working as a gaffer before I made the jump to full-time DP, I would see this all the time. If I had $1 for every time a DP ran up to me stressed, just yelling, "Do whatever you want, just light it and make it look good," I would have enough to buy eggs. I really loved working with the DPs who would communicate with me exactly what it was they wanted. Hey, we're shooting this scene at a 4 and I want to give them a really hot key upstage. I want it to be like 2 or 3 stops over and I want the shadow side to fall real dark. Okay, perfect. I now know as the gaffer that I need to take a big light way over there that's bright enough to read at an 8 or an 11, and then I can start setting up negative fill on the shadow side so that I can drop the exposure down to around a 1, 2, or 2. Is the key light way over there now too bright? No worries, we'll just throw up a net or we'll dim it down so that it's a stop lower. That's how you communicate lighting, and then you just, meter and check your levels based on the lens. I think that understanding how to light for the lens is something that has become forgotten, but it is something that is incredibly important to creating professional images. It's how all the heavy hitters in Hollywood do it. And I get it. I understand that maybe it sounds really annoying having to do that. It's a lot easier to just run into a place and then look at the monitor and then just futz with the camera until the image on the monitor looks awesome. But I don't think that's a good approach to always be taking. I'll be honest, I have been in that position so many times on shoots where, time is running out and the only way I can make the day is just throw the lens wide open, just, make do with available light and just run around and get stuff. Because I don't have a lot of time, I just start broadly lighting spaces and then dialing in my exposure settings last minute on the camera to make it work. And that is the habit that I feel a lot of people have. It is something that I try to be better about, and I have plenty of room to grow. We all do in this industry because we never truly stop learning in film. And I also understand that you don't always have the luxury of time on your side, so it might be all you have to do, but I'm just saying I think this is something worth learning how to do. Setting limitations for yourself imposes discipline, and in the end, it's going to make you a much stronger cinematographer and a better artist. So go get a light meter. Bye.